Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Beast of Burden podcast. It's your host, Jesse Knox. Beast of Burden is brought to you by Doubletree Habitat Enhancement Inc. We do forestry management such as crop tree release, understory removal, prescribed fire, tree plantings. We also do custom drillings for CRP, farmers for cover crops, pastures, food plots, you name it. Uh, if you want the show to grow, head on over to iTunes or Spotify and leave a 5-star review and a positive comment if you deem it so worthy. That really helps us out. If you want to see about habitat updates or projects we're working on or show updates, head on over to Instagram at Beast of Burden Podcast, all one word. Check us out over there. And folks, it is that time of year. My habitat season is always ongoing, but if you guys are curious about what you can do to enhance your farm, your land, and have ideas, new set of eyes, a new famous saying I've heard: a fresh set of eyes will help you find more beans on the bean pole or whatever from meat eater. Anyway, check out over our affiliated podcast, the Land Plan team of the Habitat podcast. You got Jared, Brian, the Phil, Zach, and myself serving primarily in the New England and Midwestern area, but we can go further. Check us out over there. We can help you achieve your habitat goals. Speaking of which, I have the one and only, I consider a good friend of mine, of the Habitat podcast team, Brian, bring the rain. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very good, my friend. It's a beautiful day here in Southwest Pennsylvania. Blue skies, sunny. Supposed to get to like 50 today. So, yeah, the
Ooh,
good
same
Lord's
here.
been good to me and my family, and just can't complain about anything, really.
Awesome. Yeah, we're about the same here. It's only 63, but we got like really high winds, but it is gorgeous out there. I've been running maple syrup buckets, and that's been more productive. I got like 11 gallons in the fridge I got to boil today. So
Wow.
see how that works out. So, but no, have you guys experienced that terrible cold snap back in January, or was it a little more mild?
Yeah, we did. And it was just a little too harsh because I was waiting for those ducks to come down out of Canada. And what the
Dang
experts
it.
were saying was it got so cold so fast that they just kept on moving. They never really stopped. Not that we get a big group of
Oh,
numbers through Western Pennsylvania, but usually that late season push gives us enough to have a good time.
gotcha. Gotcha. Man, so did you guys, I saw some videos you guys were hunting a little bit. Did you get much shooting at all, or they're just pretty slim pickings?
It was pretty slow. We got a few
Mm.
ducks here and there, which makes it fun, but yeah, it was just nice to get out in the duck blind. We get so wrapped up in deer and deer habitat all the time. It's nice to take a little break from that.
Oh, absolutely. Did you do any duck hunting like October, November, or do you try to save it for the late season?
I did not this year, this past season, but this upcoming season, I'm planning on taking advantage of that. Ohio has a teal season early, and so does
Awesome.
Maryland, and I'm fairly close to both of those states, so I think I want to try that early teal because we don't have an early teal season here in PA.
Oh, really? Gotcha. We have an early teal. It coincides with our dove season, like early September for about 2 to 3 weeks. But 2020, the first year I went, I didn't shoot any birds, but I saw a lot, and they always landed like our shooting light is. I think it's a half hour after sunrise is when you can start shooting for
Right.
teal. But every time they land, it was always before that time they land. But I'm like, I saw birds, but ever since then, it's been. I think that year they had more colder snaps up north that pushed them, and the past few years they just have not had those cold snaps in
Yeah.
September, October, and also this year. I mean, we're in a drought, so they are just like, "There's no water here. Let's just keep on flying,"
Mm.
you know. And we went Halloween weekend, I think, for our actual duck season. And it was cool. I really experienced an actual duck hunt, but I had all of us just had terrible shots. One of my buddies got a gadwall and he gave it to me. He goes, I don't like him. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try it. But it was so cool because like we're sitting there and I hear like this jet engine taking off. I'm like, that's really loud. That sounds really close. And it was the ducks flying in. I didn't know they made that sound. I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
could you imagine when when the pioneers first came over here? Because they used to say like the whole sky be just darkened with ducks. So could you imagine that many ducks flying in behind you like that? That'd be so intense. But
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What are you
So
concentrating on there? Are you hunting potholes or farm
that's
ponds
the
or
thing.
lakes or rivers?
That's the thing that stinks for Southeast Iowa because there's like a million farm ponds, and you're asking a lot for that little bird to land in your pond, you
Yeah.
know. So there's a couple ponds a buddy of mine has access to, and they're more ducky. They got really good veg on the edge and has a lot more shallow banks. So they like to land there. But man, there's just so many farm ponds. They just tend to land there. But I'm looking at some waterfowl. I shouldn't say waterfowl. What's the right word? They're public access, but you can hunt waterfowl there. And like
Yeah.
it looks like Ducks Unlimited's been involved. So it's a
Right.
good hike to go to. But I'm like, I like to get more into it. And these ponds around here, yeah, they're fun. They have ducks, but I'd rather have a increase my chances, make it worth getting up at 3:30 in the morning and go drive and put these decoys out. So, but no,
Yeah. On X has a Ducks Unlimited layer.
yes, it does.
Oh, okay, you're familiar with that. I just found out about that recently, so that's pretty cool.
But my cousin came up and he saw all the different layers Onyx had. And I was like, man, this is perfect. So you can
Yeah.
look up all those Ducks Unlimited projects and WMAs and whatnot. So that's super huge. But so what I'm trying to find a right way to go through this here. Okay. Well, I guess I should ask you this. In Pennsylvania, do you hunt primarily in Pennsylvania for waterfowl? Or do you go other places to hunt?
Yeah, primarily. I mean, I've done a couple of out-of-state trips. Had a really good late season hunt in Montana one year on the Madison
Cool.
River, which was really cool. Um, Mostly Pennsylvania though,
You
Ohio.
guys got more marshes and wetlands in Pennsylvania.
The northwest part of the state, which is just north of me,
Mm,
we have a lot of swamps from Lake Erie, and we get a lot of birds from Lake Erie. And then we have the Erie National Wildlife Refuge there that
mm,
holds a good
mm.
bit of birds. And yeah, there's a lot of swamps in that flat ground up there. So it's decent. I mean, we've had some years if we get the right conditions in Canada. We've had some
Mm.
really good hunts, but it's not a major flyway, so you're always going to be battling that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's yeah, at least you have that refuge next door. So that's just like a big embankment for ducks. And you don't have to hunt there, obviously, but hunt the places nearby. That'd be sweet.
Sure.
So you and I were talking and you made a comment that I thought was really interesting that you were implying that you're more of a multi-species hunter and it helps you um that's helping your deer hunting. I was wondering if you wanted to discuss that and tell me what you were thinking. I agree with what you're saying, but I'd like to know your point of view on that.
Yeah, yeah. I think we were talking over text about the dangers of becoming a single species hunter,
Hmm.
and it's kind of easy to do, especially with whitetails, because there's so much involved if you own or lease a property. It's as most of your listeners know, it's 24/7, 365. I mean, you're out there putting food plots in the spring, all
Hmm.
summer. You're hanging sets and moving blinds, and then you're grinding all fall and into Christmas time. So it's sometimes I think we can get hyper focused on that and we kind of miss out on other pursuits. Growing up hunting with my dad,
Mm.
we would get into small game, we would go fishing, and you get to, at least for my situation and a lot of my friends that I do this habitat for deer stuff with, it's like it takes up so much of your time and you kind of forget
Yeah.
what's going on with all the other things that you used to love and chase, and you start to miss it.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. And that's the thing. It's like, I try not to get too wrapped up. And for me, one of my goals in the fall as my and hunting and in habitat management is smack as many does as possible. I mean, we are to me, if you ask me, our deer population is way out of it's high for southeast Iowa. So but and also it's my way of putting more meat in the freezer for my family and it's just a better management strategy. But there's other stuff I want to hunt too, like squirrels and rabbits. And you have a limited amount of time. Like, I'm blessed to be able to set somewhat I have some flexibility to go when I want to hunt, but I still got a lot of work to do and other responsibilities. So it's like, okay, do I want to spend time chasing squirrels or want to try to put like an 80-pound doe in the freezer? So
Right.
it's,
Right.
but sometimes you just gotta go and just enjoy that stuff. And that's why I really enjoy waterfowl hunting because it's so different. I mean, I used to squirrel hunt and rabbit hunt quite a bit when I was a kid. I still really enjoy it. And due to the habitat practices, we've gained more rabbits back, which is awesome. But the waterfowl, it's just so much fun. And all upland game birds to me are just become more attractive. Like I'm trying to find more place to go hunt snipe and woodcock at. and I'm trying to introduce more different species to introduce woodcock again on my place. But yeah, just, I don't know. So when you're focusing on different species, do you think it just helps you take the pressure off of deer hunting, helps you have clarity in your hunting, put pressure on yourself? What's your what would you try to really encourage folks to go try to break out of the deer stand and go hunt squirrels or something?
Yeah, all the above, definitely what you said there. For sure takes the pressure off, especially if you're a grind style hunter, kind of like I am, being in
Mm,
Pennsylvania. Ohio, not so much. We've got some good bucks over there that are a little more plentiful, but sometimes you can really make hunting not fun when you start to
I know
put
that
too
feeling.
much pressure on yourself. Yeah.
Right, right. Well,
And
that's the thing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, and taking a day or two to go sit in the duck blind, and I mean, heck, you can get away with a lot in the duck blind, especially if you got a couple buddies with you. You can have a
Oh, yeah,
camp stove in there. You can have some nice conversations until the birds start
right.
moving. And I bet you could even record a podcast in there like we're doing now. But
That'd be fun.
it's just a different. It's more of a social thing, and it's more
Right.
relaxing, and you're really immersed in it, especially when you're standing in 2 feet of water, you know, amongst the decoys and just watching those birds work. It's magical.
It is. It really is. It's intoxicating to be in there. I mean, even the mornings I went duck hunting and for teal, man, just watching the sunrise come up and the different constellations that are in the sky when you're sitting out there. It's really special, And man, I remember a couple mornings I was out in the cattails on this tiny little pond, and there's a rail swimming around, and just listen to the morning birds wake up. It's like, man, it's just each one. Either if you're hunting the timber on the pond, it's definitely has its own mystique to it as you're hunting. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
and I want to add to the pressure part, man. I had limited time to hunt. Our combining season went way further than I was expecting. We kept getting little rains, and you're combining soybeans. Any amount of moisture can make the beans start to like germinate, and then you can make them rot. And so it's very devastating to a farmer. You could have super awesome, ample crop of beans, but then they get too much moisture, the whole bin can rot out. So
Right,
it was a
right.
lot of like frantically no rain all summer. And then October, we're trying to combine, and we should have been done in a week. It took us like a month to get it done. I'm like, what in the
Jeez.
world? So when you think I have time to go bow hunt, no, there's stuff to clean up. I had CSP stuff to do, but I felt like there is pressure on to get back in that stand and to hunt. And I made some stupid mistakes with my bow. I did a whole podcast on it, and it's like I'm not proud of it at all. And I took lessons from that, but also it's just like you put too much pressure and stuff. Like they're deer. They're
Right,
either
right.
someone else is going to take them out or I'm going to hit it. The funny thing is the two does that I wounded, my buddies ended up shooting during shotgun season. So it all came back around.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but no, I'm totally with you. It's like, I think that's a good point of view. Like when you start feeling like you start treating deer hunting like work, you need to go grab a 22 or, go grab some bites and go duck hunting or squirrel hunting or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other aspect of it is, admittedly, deer hunting is kind of a selfish pursuit. I mean,
Sure.
you're
Hmm.
trying to get that buck. You can't really have a social hunt with that. I mean, we do some drives and stuff around PA in the late
Yeah.
season to fill some doe tags and stuff, but for the most part,
Yeah.
it's a selfish sport. And I think what's happening
Mm.
is people are getting hyper focused on deer, and I'm guilty
Hmm.
of this too. You're not only are you not taking advantage of the other opportunities that you enjoy, those other opportunities usually lead to being able to introduce other younger hunters or new
Right.
adult hunters because you can take them out for an afternoon of squirrel hunting or take them out to the duck blind. And I think that's kind of hurting hunter recruitment also because
Mm.
deer
Mm.
hunting is really selfish.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. I've seen that a lot because, like the deer management part, you're trying to, my goal is to shoot a mature buck. So, but I'm also like, my other goal is to shoot lots of does because I have too many mouths to feed,
Which is a
so
full-time job in itself.
it is, and it's also like, I think about, don't take this wrong way, but guys like you that spend a lot of time going after that buck. And, what crosses my mind is it's like, yes, you could probably nail that big buck, but also it's like, what if your neighbor does? Or, that wild dogs down the road, tear it apart, or hits out by a car, or
Right.
chase
Right.
another doe, another property. And it's like all that emotion and diligence and pursuit. I don't want to say it was for wasted because I hate to say I was wasting time, but it's like I meet a lot of hurt egos, man, and people get so butthurt over that. And it's like, guys, I mean, he'll pop up again in probably in 5 years through his genetics, you know. But you're totally right. It's like instead of us spend all this time after that one deer or whatever everybody got, it's like my neighbor. I got a good friend of mine's my neighbor now. And he asked me, it was during the rut. He's like, "Can I take my boy squirrel hunting?" He said, "Absolutely. You guys go out there. I don't care. You might push some deer my way, maybe, and intentionally. And they had a great time. His boy shot some squirrels. He loves squirrels. Now he's like 8 years old and he's just out there in the woods. They shot a raccoon. I'm like, man, this is so cool. And no, I mean, to me, it's like you got to share those moments so those kids have that little bit of investment and get them going out there again. They'll have that memory with his dad and go out there and want to do more of it. And I'm just so grateful I have this property next door. This kid can go hunt and fish when he wants to. It's like just ask, you can go. And I can't let the big buck monster get in my head,
Yeah.
because then you're right, it does become selfish. And you're like, no, sorry, I'm focused on here. And I understand, like, you've done all this work, you worked hard all year. This is my week. But also it's like, yeah, but that kid, he may not, everything might not not this kid in this particular situation, but another kid may not have a great chance right now. And like, this might be his only opportunity really to go. And
Yeah.
it's like, what do you do? So there is that push and pull, but no, I think you're totally right. It is, and you made me think about my dad, and I don't want to hog up the entire podcast, Brian, but
No,
my
you're
dad
good,
took,
man. I enjoy
he
it.
took, I appreciate it. He kind of took the fun out of hunting for me because he just be like, okay, we're going to 3 a.m. in the morning. We got to be there at 4 a.m. We're going to sit in the blind in the dark for 3 hours, wait for the deer. And you're just like, I mean, it's probably good character building, maybe.
Maybe.
But, he just made it not very fun. It was it was
Yeah.
literally a grind. And it's funny, my dad, he could talk to anybody, but he was not a great conversationalist with me.
Yeah.
Maybe I just annoyed him. I don't know, but probably. But it took me a while to get back into deer hunting and kind of relearn it. And man, I just think of that verse in the Bible about Christ talking about these little ones or little children inherit the kingdom of God. That they're gonna
Amen.
you had to have that heart of a child. And I go into the woods with that expectation of just wonder and joy, because like
Yeah.
there's so many cool things to observe. I mean, from squirrels chattering away, pheasants cackling, or a fawn playing. I mean, to me, that's the whole point. It's
Yeah.
not just about the killing part, the deer part. And my dad definitely was not all about the killing part, but I think he was just a whitetail obsessed dude. It's not, and
Oh
there's
yeah. Oh
that
yeah,
was
he
his
was.
thing. That was his thing, and I don't fault him for it at all because that was his drive in life. Good for him. But at the same time, you got to think about others in your life and like, okay, is this person responding this way, positively? As I became a trapper because all I want to do is trap. I didn't want to deer hunt. I just wanted to do my own thing, and I did
Hmm.
that for a while and picked up the bow. And man, it's that part's addicting. The
Yeah.
this the practice all summer, you get the arrow behind their shoulders and they run off and drop. Man, that's fun. That's the
Absolutely.
fun part. But anyway, but speaking of deer hunting, you had quite the season. You were hunting in early October in Ohio, which seemed very warm, and then you went to another warmer climate, Texas. So,
Yeah.
um, even though I feel like we're kind of poking on deer hunters, tell me about your deer season. How was it, and how did it go for you?
Yeah, it was another long one, but boy, they go by faster and faster every year. But when
Too,
you're in the
yeah.
moment, it's like, wow. But talking about does, man, trying to remember how many does I shot. 7. We started out
Good for you. Awesome.
in September. We have an early season here in Southwest Pennsylvania in the suburbs. A friend of mine lives in a
Oh, cool.
town just north of me, and they have a really bad deer population. If you were to drive through there
Mm.
right now, if you didn't see a 100+ deer just on a couple of roads, you wouldn't see any. But he's got some neighbors up there that need some help, and goodness, I think between me and Bob and Dave and my friend Chris, I think we shot at least 15 does that first like week or two. And then
Wow.
that led into a public land challenge hunt that I went on with Jared from the Habitat podcast.
Mm.
We went up to northern Michigan and
Oh boy.
camped out, spent the weekend sleeping in the back of my truck. I've got a pretty decent camping setup in the back of my truck with a cap. So that was kind of fun, an adventure hunt. Guys kind of struggled to get deer, but Jared and I both got a nice sized doe and had him hanging at the camp pole, which was pretty cool, and celebrated with the guys from Deer Hunter podcast, Kevin over there. Um, who else was there? Stealth Strips, Latitude Outdoor guys, um, G5 guys were there.
Wow.
I'm probably forgetting some people, but it was a lot of fun in camp and catching up with those guys. So that kind of made the season right there, just the end of September and beginning of October, and then coming into the end of October, chasing these big whitetails we have in Ohio. Started grinding. Man, I had a really good opportunity early November. In fact, I think it was my first sit of November. Had a really
Mm.
nice 8 point come in, probably 140-ish type 8 point. Um, Came in behind me. I was sitting in between a food source and kind of a pinch point off of it's kind of hill country there. I wouldn't call it a mountain, but kind of a pinch point off of a hill there.
Gotcha.
And there's some does filtered out in the evening. And I heard this buck before I even saw him, which was really cool. He let out this really loud grunt, and I turned and couldn't see him. And then he came up over a rise, and I thought he was going to come out the trail that was 20 yards from me, but he ended up moving north. My wind was kind of sketchy. I think I was just off because he didn't get spooked, but thinking back how he reacted, I think he may have gotten a little touch of it because he ended up going further out and took the trail that was like 40 yards.
Oh.
So when he stepped out in the opening, I think I ranged him at 39, which is kind of, I really like him to be 20, 25 anymore, but I practice out to 40 and 50 all summer. So I feel real comfortable with it. So he stepped out in the opening. I gave him a soft grunt. He stopped. That's always a gamble too. Do I stop the deer? Because you never know how they're going to react. Well,
Sure.
it didn't seem like it at the time, but when I released, he must have dropped a little bit because I hit him high.
Mm.
Uh, Everything felt good. The shot felt good. The anchor felt good. The release felt good. I thought I hit him good. He tore out of there like his ass was on fire.
Mm.
Then went down. He left that clearing and dropped down into a creek bottom. And as soon as we got down the creek bottom, there was a big puddle of blood. I'm like, this is
Good.
great, fantastic.
Awesome.
From that blood, we started walking down. There was 3 trails that went off of that creek bottom there. We couldn't find any blood. I'm like,
Oh.
how is this possible? How is there
Right.
this big puddle of blood? And after 30 plus years of bow hunting, like you think you've seen it all when it comes to blood trails, and I've been on a lot of them. But just another new learning experience. And we started doing circles, and it got later and later. And I says, you know what? Let's just come back in the morning.
Mm.
So came back in the morning, still couldn't find anything. Was able to get a hold of a tracking dog. The guy was a teacher, so he couldn't get out there until after school.
Mm. Mm.
He came out, and those dogs are incredible. His dog found blood down that trail, like just beyond where we stopped. Found some patches. The dog looked for a while, and after about an hour or so, he came back, circled around, and he says, "Listen, I've had this dog for a long time. We've been on a lot of tracks." He says, "I know when that dog's looking for a dead deer, and then when it's not really interested." He says, "I'm pretty sure your deer's alive.
Ah.
It doesn't look like a fatal hit, but he goes, I'll look for a little bit more, but I just want to let you know that." So unfortunately, weren't able to recover the deer. Um,
I'm sorry.
Probably about a month or so later, we got another picture of him, and subsequently a bunch more pictures. So Yeah,
Wow.
that's what it ended up being. It was a high shoulder hit when he ducked.
Mm.
Uh,
Ah,
that's the second time this has happened to me in Ohio, so it's like,
interesting.
man, what do I gotta do? But, that's part of it, unfortunately, but thankfully, it wasn't a wound that he suffered from.
No, that's great. Well, there's always another chance you might see him again next year, just never know. But no, it's always, I'm not picking on it 'cause I made 2 bad shots this on does, and it's never a good feeling,
No.
it just, I don't know about you, but man, I so mad at myself. I was like trying to shoot my bow in the dark at my target. Like, what's wrong with that snake? What's wrong with me? Just
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. But
Yep.
I just, you probably have done this 100 times, but apparently I was using too cheap of a bow wax
Hmm.
because I was putting it on, it wouldn't melt in the string because I took my bow shop. I'm like, I'm doing something wrong. You gotta show me. And Tad's his name. He goes, what's your bow axe look like? I show him, he goes, oh, this is crap. He throws behind his shoulder, goes, get this stuff. It's like $10 a tube, but man, it just melts on that string. And my group placement got way better. Like
Really?
way better, like within an instant. I'm like, okay, cool. So my bad. Yeah, it was just because you could see the strings were starting to become frayed. They had hairs on the string.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I told him I'm waxing my bowstring. He goes, yeah, you just can't get melting the, you needed to get really melting the string. So,
Right.
but, well, so, okay. So that was in Ohio. Now I think you and I were texting back in early October. We were having kind of a warm front and it was still pretty hot for you in Ohio, wasn't it? And you were just grinding out in a blind, weren't you?
Yeah, so, I wasn't just jumping in there, obviously, early season. If you've got a buck that's showing up regularly, it's a good
Hmm.
idea to go after him. So we had some good bucks that were kind of teasing us, showing up kind of semi-regularly, but not like
Mm.
super pattern, but you can't kill them from the couch. So,
No,
the
no.
wind was right and they were
Oh,
showing
good.
up, so we figured we'd give it a shot.
So, I sweat like a pig if it's like 75, and I don't mind. I just sweat easily. So, does that, and I try not to get obsessed with the sense stuff. I just try to use common sense, like keep your clothes hung outside, don't wear your boots in the gas station, play the wind best you can. Um, it seemed like it was pretty warm in that blind. Does that not bother you regarding scent, or just the wind is correct and it doesn't mess up your hunt at all? Or what's your experience with that?
Yeah,
Warm season hunting, I
of
mean.
course you've gotta play the wind as best as you can. We all
Yeah.
know that it doesn't always go the right way, but, um, yeah, it gets uncomfortable sometimes, but there's a lot of good clothing out there now. I mean, I don't really have any brand loyalty to, anything
Yeah.
specific. I used a lot of First Light stuff because they
Mm.
sponsor, the Habitat podcast, but,
Oh,
they
that's
have
great. That's awesome.
lots of thin layers. And, I think one of my favorite pieces, I have like a quarter zip long sleeve, piece from Sitka, and it's
Oh,
comfortable, but it wicks the moisture away from you, so when it's hot, you still feel like you're pretty comfortable. So, yeah,
gotcha.
it's just matching the conditions, playing the wind, dressing the right way. I use an ozonics unit. A lot of people
Hmm.
don't like to carry extra crap in the woods, and I don't blame them. I'm kind of a
Sure.
minimalist myself, but I've used
Yeah.
that long enough to know that it works, and I think that's why
Ha.
that big buck that come in behind me, I think he got a little nose full, but he also got that ozone. And from what they say, sometimes those deer will hit that ozone and human mix, and they kind of think maybe it's further away. Now, of course, we don't know because we can't talk to them, but I've seen it happen enough to think that there's a lot of truth to that. But to each
Okay.
their own. I mean,
Right.
I still try to take a shower in unscented soap. I mean, I don't
Yep.
buy any of those products. I use unscented Dove bar soap. Uh,
Oh, okay.
I've
Gotcha.
got I forget what brand clothing wash. It's like that all scent free all or whatever it's called.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that I try to do the best I can, keep my stuff in totes, but I'm not like super crazy about it. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
if I get up to go hunting and I say, "Oh man, I forgot to wash my clothes," I'm going hunting.
Oh, well. Right.
I'm not that
Right.
worried about it.
Well, thanks for letting me know about the unscented stuff because I won't say the name of the product, but some of the scent stuff the deer hunting stuff I use, you look at the ingredients and I'm like, do I really want these on my balls? It's like there's stuff I can't pronounce and I'm like, I don't know if this
Yeah.
is okay. But no, that's good to know about the unscented stuff. I'll keep that in mind next season because yeah. So, back to the UP. Have you hunted up there much before?
No, actually, that was I've been through there a couple of times, some cross country trips. I actually did a motorcycle trip one time around the Great Lakes, and I came across is it the Mackinac? I don't know if I'm
Mackinac
saying that
Bridge.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
came across that down through the UP, and yeah, it was pretty cool. But we were in northern Michigan hunting. We weren't quite
Oh, I'm
up to the
sorry, not the
upper
UP.
peninsula.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
but pretty
Gotcha.
close.
Gotcha. So, and that's kind of the cool thing. You've had a lot of different areas you've hunted, like from Texas to Upper Michigan. What were some things you learned that might have been challenging that you need to adapt to in Northern Michigan versus PA or Ohio?
Well, it was pretty similar to PA because
Okay.
we have a lot of the same traditions, a lot of the
Mm,
similar hunter numbers, a lot of the similar pressure. The landscape is kind of similar too, but
mm,
at the end of the day, you've got to just not overthink things, and that's
gotcha.
that's hard for you and I and guys like us. But yeah, I mean, deer are deer. They're gonna do similar things everywhere you go. So that's one of the most important things I try to do is to think about even on a new landscape. Okay, the deer is still the same animal. How are they going to
Right.
act here? And try to go from there.
Gotcha. So it wasn't. So I've been to UP a couple times, and I know you're in Northern Michigan, and I'm just trying to understand that the habitat because UP you have one of those adlers and aspen thickets and
Hmm.
whatnot. Does Northern Michigan? I don't remember very well, but does it have that similar habitat or more just like hardwood forest?
That was a mix. There's a lot of.
Mm,
I'm trying to remember if they were spruce or pines, but there was a lot of evergreens mixed in with the hardwoods and a lot of soft
mm,
aspens and
cool.
things like that. Yeah, yeah, really pretty country.
Gotcha. Oh, it's gorgeous. I really enjoy that part of Michigan. So, but no, yeah, I just every play. You're right. A deer is a deer is a deer anywhere you go. I think, but it's always interesting to hear different perspectives on all the different conditions from
Yeah,
one
for
state to the
sure.
next. So you went to Texas too, just a traveling
Yeah,
rover hunter this year, man.
yeah.
How far you went down? I'm trying. I think I heard you on the podcast. You're like south of San Antonio, just not too far away from the border. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we were 50 miles from the border, if I remember
Wow.
correctly.
So did you come across any migrant caravans or not quite in that area?
Not there,
That's
but
good.
I have hunted because we were closer to the coast, the eastern
Okay.
side of South Texas, but I've hunted further west in South Texas, around Laredo and things. And while we were hunting, we've actually seen uh, migrants crossing with backpacks
Wow.
and things like that. So, but no, not on this trip.
Did it, does that ever make you uncomfortable? And I'm not being, what's the right word? I don't know. Like the cartel stuff and you don't know who's going across the border. I mean, it's just an open party down there right now and it looks
Yeah.
like things are kind of heating up. Does that make you uncomfortable or, you got military and officer experience, it doesn't bother you at all or
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be able to read the situation, of course, but
Mhm.
and things are so different today. I mean, I've been hunting in
Yeah.
South Texas for 20 years,
Oh, really?
and it was a lot different back then. In fact, my one of my good friends that used to write for the magazine that I was running, he was from South Texas, and when I would go down and hunt his properties, he would actually carry extra water bottles and little cans of Vienna
Mm,
sausage. And he said, if you're comfortable with it, he says, if I run into them and they're decent people, I'll give them water and food. And he says,
mm.
because most of them are just human beings trying to make a better life
Right.
for their
Right.
families. And I think
Right.
some of that's probably true now, but the scary thing is, and I don't want to get too political, but it's like our government right now is just like advertising, and they're coming in by the hundreds of thousands, if not more. And I just saw yesterday there was a bunch of Chinese
Yeah.
immigrants coming in through the border. So that makes you scratch your head. Like, how are they making that effort to go from China to Mexico to come up? That kind of concerns me a little bit.
It is concerning. And I don't want to get the political bandwagon either, but I did see an interesting I forget the guy's name. He's been on Fox News a couple times. I'm not a big Fox guy, but he's a very unbiased journalist, and he goes to these different cities to see what's going on. And he was
That's
investigating the
pretty rare
migrant.
these days.
Oh, no
Unbiased
kidding.
journalists.
Oh, yeah, it is. That's why I like him,
Right.
And he went to New York City to see the migrant. It's insane. And I
Yeah.
feel bad because there's one, they shut down a school to put these folks into the school, pull kids out of school because they kept these migrants in a flood zone. So they put them in a school. And I'm like, and then they kicked him out within a couple hours. Like they had just had him in there enough till the storm was done, and they kicked him back out in the cold. And there's African migrants coming over, and those guys can actually speak some decent English. And they're like, "Yeah, I was told I was going to get a job, and I can actually do something here, but I've been stuck here for like 3 months, and I don't know what to do." I mean, and these guys are like shivering to death because they're from like Somalia or Ghana or whatever. And I'm like, I get the humanitarian aspect, what people are trying to do, but it's really not humane if you have people coming from really warm climates. You shove them in New York City and they don't have the means to do anything with them at all. And it's like this whole thing is just a mess. So
Yeah.
it's not very, my heart goes out to them because you're right. A lot of them want a better life. And, America is a land of opportunity, but it's like, okay, look, we got to figure some out here a little more
Yeah.
intelligently than this. But
For
anyway,
sure.
so you've been down there for 20 years. So is it the same ranch you've been going to, or have you been to different parts throughout Texas?
I've pretty much hunted all over Texas. My
Cool.
friend Roger and I went to West Texas out by Del Rio one time. And it's kind of funny because a lot of people have a misconception that Texas is just this big high fence place where you just walk into a small pen and shoot things. And there are places like that. I mean,
Right.
there's places like that in every state. But what happens is over time, a lot of these exotics that have been brought in for
Hmm.
years and years and years, they get out, they escape,
Right.
they move on. And West Texas is very unique. It's very dry, very rocky, very
Mm.
rugged.
Hmm.
It's like no place I've ever been before, and there was just wild sheep on the landscape because it was like their perfect habitat from wherever they
Right.
were from. They had
Mm.
like mouflons, and I'm trying to remember what those Spanish sheep were called that we were hunting. But they had so many different things, and it was just a really cool experience. So yeah, Texas is one of my favorite places to go. They just have so much to offer.
So when you're outside of outside of those pens, and you're on private land that doesn't do that, or public land, these exotics are there. What's their conservation board or DNR say? Are they just open season, or do they actually have tags for these exotics?
As far as I'm aware, the exotics are not covered under any type of
Okay.
licensing. I know the wild boars are unlimited, and then the javelinas are native. So
Right.
I think you're allowed two javelinas a season. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, but anything that's not native, I don't think is regulated. But don't quote me on that.
Gotcha. The reason I ask, I think it was California, and I need to double check this. They might have changed the last time I checked. They had, I think you had to get tags for wild boars in California that were invasive, and I'm like, what? So I was, and some agencies are like, hey, let's make some money off this,
Yeah,
or they did the right thing and just like get rid of them. But no,
yeah,
that's really
yeah,
cool. I mean, probably see like a Neil guy or whatever roaming around someone's, pasture. It's like, hey, sweet,
yeah,
save a trip to
yeah. Fair
Africa, right?
game. Yep.
Right, right. So, what kind of, how do you hunt whitetails in Texas? Is it primarily, do you use a bow or rifle, or what do you normally use or pursue when you're down there?
This was actually my very first time hunting whitetails
Oh, I see.
in
Okay.
Texas. I've always gone down for wild boars and javelina because
Oh, cool.
it's a fairly cheap hunt, and you can spend 3 days and a few $100 and have a great hunt, and you're helping the
Awesome.
landowner out
Right.
and getting some really good food. And the whitetail hunts were kind of always, I wouldn't say out of my price range, but it's like, well, gee, I can hunt whitetails back home and in
No kidding.
Ohio, and
Right.
but I just happened to come across uh, this ranch, just late winter blues, just searching the internet, like where can I go this year? And I came across this ranch, started communicating with the owner, and it's a low fence operation for whitetails. I mean, they're free
Hmm.
range. Um,
Gotcha.
and he had them priced right. And he's like, listen, this isn't the kind of place where you come and pay $5,000 or $10,000 to shoot. You know, they kind of have a scale like a menu, which I
Interesting.
get to a point, but this guy's like, this isn't that type of ranch. You can shoot whatever buck you want to shoot. He only had one restriction. They like to shoot all the 9 points and below because they want to keep their 10 points
Oh,
and let them get older.
sure.
It's it's kind of an interesting management style, but
Yeah,
I get it. So
sure.
it was one price if you shot a 9 point or lower, and it didn't matter what the score was, and then it
Hmm.
was another price which wasn't very much more if you shot a 10 point or bigger. But you were
Okay.
free to shoot whatever you wanted, so that was kind of cool. And feeders are king down there. I mean, baiting's legal. Um, we
Hmm.
we went during the rut. They were kind of rutting and chasing does around, so
Hmm.
the feed. I mean, how I try to explain it, because we can bait in Ohio too. How I try to
Hmm.
explain it to people is it's just another management tool. Like if
Hmm.
you're able to plant food plots, you have a consistent food source that you can
Yeah.
pattern deer to hunt over. And
Right.
that's all a feeder is in Texas. Like if you watch my video on my Copperhead Unlimited YouTube channel, you can see that whole hunt when we're driving to the box blind. It's like we're driving on the beach. It's just sand. They're not going to be planting much for food plots there. So they
Hmm.
have to
Gotcha.
use that type of food source to have a consistent food source to sort of pattern these deer. So,
Right.
it,
Interesting.
it, it makes a lot of sense. But we had a buck come in. I got really lucky. This never happens to me. I was there. I think we pulled in at 1 p.m. I was in the stand by 3:10, and at 3:50, this really nice 10 point came in, following a couple does that were coming through. They didn't like come over to the feeder. He was just kind of following them in that direction, and I was able to make a good shot. And, you
Cool.
know, not a super exciting story, but the hunt was fun, and to see that size buck just roaming around comfortable. There's very little pressure down there.
Sure.
It's pretty exciting.
That's really awesome. So, that deer size in Texas, would you say they're considerably smaller body size than Ohio?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, which is kind of cool because it makes their racks look a lot bigger than they are.
Right, right. Have you tried any of the meat yet that from like a Texas buck versus like your bucks from or deer from PA or Ohio, or
Yeah, yeah.
much difference in taste at all, or
No, not that I can tell.
interesting? Oh, that's cool. So, what'd you do the rest of the time after you shot your deer?
Well, I had two friends with me from PA that were hunting, and you can also shoot wild boars. So
Oh, fun.
we'd go out at nighttime, and you can hunt at night with infrared optics and stuff. So
Oh,
that was really
nice.
cool. I've done a little bit of that for coyotes in the past, but haven't done a whole lot of that style hunting. So that was an interesting experience.
I bet. I bet. Did you see quite a few hogs coming throughout the
Not
night, or is it
many, not
really
many.
okay?
Yeah, and what happened was the first night after I got my deer, the guide said, "Hey, you're welcome to go out." And I says, "You know what? If you think it might hurt us driving around, I don't want to mess up these guys deer hunting for the morning.
Mm,
Driving
hmm.
around on the ranch and stuff." And he said, "Well, it shouldn't." He says, "But it could happen, I guess."
I
So
love how laid back this
I
guy
just
is.
decided, yeah, I just decided, you know what? I don't want to screw these guys up. So I didn't go out until the last evening to see if we
Mm,
could find any hogs, but it didn't work out for hogs, but it was fun. One of the other guys ended up getting a buck, and we had a good time.
gotcha. That's awesome. So, in the past, when you went down there to hog hunt, did they primarily use hounds, or they just lure them in using like these feeders and whatnot? How'd you hunt hogs in Texas
Yeah.
other previous times?
Yeah, the big thing was they have these real long ranch roads. They call them senderos, and they'll just drive down um, and spread corn out. Effective tactic is to have somebody sit on a tailgate and kind of just sprinkle a bag of corn as you're driving along. And then if you catch my latest hunt on my YouTube video, you'll see the guide has like a salt spreader on the front of his truck, but he's spreading corn as
I'll
he's
be
driving
dang.
down these senderos. But Yeah, the country is so thick, especially further west. Um, you're not walking through there, let alone seeing anything. So that
Right,
kind of
right.
that kind of just draws the wild boars and the javelina and the deer out to the opening so you can get a shot.
Right. No, that's really cool. It's just so wild to me. I mean, they're to me, it's like it's an invasive species. Like, do what you got to do to get them thinned
Yeah,
out or eliminated. But just the idea of like, let's just broadcast corn down the roads. I mean, if you do that here for deer, you get a ticket like
right,
immediately and
right.
raid your house, take
Yeah,
your firstborn.
it's a different world, but yeah, when I first started hunting down there is when I was running the Bowyer's Journal magazine, and
Mm,
we all went down there with traditional bows,
cool.
and what they would have, some of those senderos would be side by side, so you would have two roads running alongside of each other with a real
Okay.
thick brush patch in between the two roads.
Ah,
So you would corn the upwind side, and then you could sneak along on the other road and do some spot and stock with
that's cool.
traditional archery, which is really cool. And I've got a really old video. It's kind of funny on my YouTube channel of one of those Texas traditional archery hunts like that. It's you'll get to see what I'm talking about if you've never seen it before.
That's cool. Now to check that, I'm really sorry. I didn't know you had a YouTube channel, so we'll have to promote that and plug it. And
Yeah,
I'll have to subscribe when we're done. That's really cool. Do you do much trad archer anymore?
not as much as I would like to. It's a
Gotcha.
commitment. I've built a bunch of bows and I've shot a bunch of animals with bows that I built myself. My crowning achievement, ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with Native American uh,
Mm,
weapons and just how they hunted. And I always
sure.
wanted to build my own bow and go out west and hunt with it. Well, I had an
That'd be
opportunity
cool.
to shoot a bison with a bow that I built myself, and I've got that on the wall downstairs. And that, that's like quintessential classic American hunting. For a species that was almost
Absolutely.
extinct.
No, that is so cool. Man, that's awesome. I love that. What's your favorite material to use to make a like what kind of wood or tree species you like for your trad bows?
So it depends on the bow. If you're building a what's called a self bow, that's a one piece bow made out of one piece of wood. Osage orange is hands down the
Mm,
best type of wood for that.
that's what I've heard.
If
Yeah.
if you're building laminated fiberglass back bows, sky's the limit. You can
Gotcha.
you can pretty much use anything because the fiberglass is what's providing the strength and the stretch.
Makes sense. Gotcha. Gotcha. So, what did you use for the string?
I've done as traditional as deer leg sinew or deer back
Wow.
sinew, all the way
Huh.
down to modern materials. I mean, you can
Did
get
you
some B50 and twist it up.
did you make the sinew like out of deer you shot or how?
Yeah,
Really?
you take it off the back strap and pound it down and pull it apart like rope. Yeah.
That's cool. Do you have you on your YouTube channel? Do you have any videos showing how to do that?
I don't have much of that stuff on there. That was, I started that magazine back in 2005. I had subscribers in 33 countries when I ended up getting bought out by another publisher. But
Huh.
yeah,
Wow.
it was kind of, the internet and YouTube and all that stuff was kind of new back then.
Sure, sure. No, that's fascinating. That's one thing I have a small interest in it, but my wife's probably going to leave me if I have one more obsession that
I do
comes
have
up.
some back issues of the magazine that I'll bring you when I come out to see you. So
Oh, no, that'd be great. No, I
yeah,
really
there's a
appreciate
lot of
that.
that stuff in there. It'd be cool.
No, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Um, so in talking about deer hunting, I listened to the Habitat podcast recent guest. I think his name is Michael Back, gentleman from Southern Ohio, who's an outfitter, and he had some interesting things to suggest, like trying to hunt more in the during the day during the rut. Try to kind of how do you put it? Those bucks move. That sounds like the older deer, mature bucks tend to travel more during the day looking for does, is what
Hmm.
I gathered. And he was more strategic. And it made me think about my hunting strategies because my land is not huge. It's bigger than some folks out east, but it's pretty small compared to other Iowa farms in Iowa. It's 132 acres, and most of my stands are quick access. I can hop off the road. I can go down the trail to my food plot real easily. But there's some parts of my property. It's like I started thinking about he was saying is like, oh, I actually walk across the whole 40 acres to get to one stand on the other side of the property. It's like, yeah, like I said, I don't get too crazy about the scent stuff, but in the timber is being watched, and it might be a squirrel or a woodpecker or whatever, but there's always on you. And what if you had that big buck that was watching you come in, and I have bedding everywhere. So everywhere I think about with scent and everything, that scent's being blown somewhere. If I'm strategic, it'd be blown away from the bedding area. But at the same time, it's like, no matter how clean you are, they know you're there. Let's just be honest. So I want to know your perspective in a situation like that. When you set up your stands and blinds, like how do you try to keep your access minimal as possible? Meaning like distance, or do you give yourself, I'm going to only go X amount of yards in to deter those situations, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it depends on the situation. Like
Right.
my private land leases in Ohio, we have the luxury of having low pressure, and a
Mm.
lot of times, and you can change the habitat too. So a lot of times we'll set up the blind or the tree stand first, and then kind of build around that. We'll get the access
Oh,
dialed
okay.
first,
That's cool. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you can say, okay, I can get in here. It's bulletproof. Al's really good at doing that. Al has some lights out uh, blind locations that you just slip right into, and the deer will never know you're there. But that's a good strategy if you can manipulate the habitat around something that's already easy to get into. On the flip side of that, if you're mobile hunting, especially if you have to go in deeper somewhere, you have to give something up, right? We can't
Yeah.
float there. We don't have hoverboards yet that can get us to our stand. I'm sure
Could
that's
you
probably
imagine?
coming someday, but
Right.
yeah, you got to give up something. But I think I think rubber boots help. I think
Sure.
ozonics helps. Obviously, playing the wind. If you have to walk an extra 20 minutes a different way to keep the wind from blowing into a sanctuary, or where do you think those deer are bedding? Absolutely do that. But you're going to have to give up something to get there.
Right. Well, my brain's going like 1,000 miles a minute. I'm trying to get one thought.
It's all good.
I'm gonna start with a story. So when I first got into DoubleTree, that fall after a very busy season, I had a client. He had a friend of his coming down from Wisconsin to hunt his farm. He goes, he's in a wheelchair. He might need some help. Like, oh, sure. So I went down there, met the guy, and hobbled out of his truck. I forget how he got out of his truck. I think he had some kind of swing or something. But he unloaded. Um, what was it? It was a wheelchair on tracks. Got it down. He goes, I said, well, I have the side by side. So I'll just hop in with you. So he hops in. He goes, give me a small tour. So we start driving. And we didn't go very far. We went down the CRP field to a draw, and this draw led to a pond. And by the pond was the food plot. He goes, stop. Said, okay. And he goes, pull me up there. So we start pulling up there. He goes, here's the spot. It's like this little rise over this draw. He said, take me back to the truck. So take him back to the truck, gets his motorized wheelchair. So I'm going to get to work. So, do you need help? Nope. All right. Well, I'm gonna go check the trail cameras. That way, you know what's going on, and I'll see you in a little bit. So I go check the trail cameras, pull him in. I go meet him. This dude has built a brush blind fit for his wheelchair. All right. I mean, it looks like
It's cool.
something the militia from 1776 would have been used to spy on the British. Right. I'm like, wow, this guy hustled. And so, gave him the cards. Okay, that's cool. And then he left. A few days later, gives me a call. Goes, I shot a buck. Could you come down and help me drag it out? I said, sure. This deer was gigantic. I mean, probably 5.5. He had to score 180. I mean, he was a huge buck. And this guy just knew, like, to come down here, and he just paid attention to his environment. He knew how the deer just being deer. And there was just ingenuity. He didn't rely on like a portable blind. He didn't bring a stand. I mean, he just made it work for his situation. And it made me think, it's like, man, I never forgotten that. And sometimes like I have a lot of experience with habitat stuff, but also learning how to pattern deer has always been kind of a short side of mine, because I spend more time doing the habitat management than run trail cameras, because the habitat to me is more important than the deer part. But then also sometimes I'm not always successful because I don't put the time in the trail cameras because I have other things I'd rather prioritize with. But 10 years later, it makes me really think about, it's like, man, where am I falling short in my hunting strategy just to keep it super super simple,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I look at my farm and
It's that
it's like,
overthinking it again,
yeah,
like
yeah,
we
I just
always
got to
do.
kiss, right? Keep it simple,
Yep.
stupid,
Yep.
So, and it just, and that's the thing, my farm, it's just, it changes all the time from our management. We're going to be doing burns. So that's going to improve it, but it's also going to just, and the thing is, that's so funny, Brian, like all those cedar trees we felled, deer movement didn't change. It increased. Like the trails they used for years are still there.
Yeah.
I went, did some filming on my farm yesterday. They just have the trail that I walk on every day, just plow down to a highway. I'm like, holy crap. And there's, what are they eating on? There's no food back here. I mean, it's gone, but they love it, So, but, when let's say you're cold rolling, let's say you're hunting public lands, a new lease, and you don't have a lot of time to scout and do, what are some things you're looking for to go here? This is the magic spot.
Funnels,
Yeah. Funnels are big.
places that most, if it's public, I'm trying to get away from the crowds. There's something to be said for that too. There's some overlooked spots that you can kill bucks right under people's noses, but yeah, I'm looking for the thickest areas I can find, and funnels. You want to kind of have two, at least two, but if you get three or four things working in your favor, if you've got
Hmm.
thick cover, a funnel, a water source, a food source, all coming together in one spot, obviously that's
Right.
where you want to key in on. But yeah, you want to try to put as much of that in your favor as possible.
Right. Right. Well, and that's the thing, I think about the deer movement, and I've always told my clients, and if I ever have consultant jobs, you don't always have to rely on your food plot, because like my farm has food all year around it. So there's plenty of opportunities to go set up somewhere that a deer is going to go be better my place, but go across the road to the bean field or the two alfalfa fields next door. There's always a chance, but also it's like, yeah, I'm starting to realize I got to take the time, put just a couple cameras up, and even if they're old Bushnells, I don't care. It's like, just put them up and see where they're going. Cause there might be certain days they're hitting my food plot, and there's certain days they want to hit the neighbor's bean or cornfield across the road,
Yeah.
and then we could
Yep.
really, you know, um, create better access to sneak in easily. So you're not bumping all of them, but at the same time, you're able to, get on top of them a little sooner,
Yeah, and if you're really going in, like you said, you don't have much intel. Uh, Funnels and food sources and things like that are all great, like I mentioned, but a lot of things guys overlook is big tracks. If you find big tracks, I mean, that's that's confirmation that there was a buck. You're not guessing like, oh, this looks like a spot a big buck would be. That's telling you a big buck is here.
Right. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but when I was walking, there's a couple big tracks, man. I was like, holy cats. I mean, and it was funny. My dad, he's like, you can never tell the difference between a doe and a buck track. I'm like, I think you could, if he was alive, like, yeah, that's a buck. And have you ever noticed, do deer have scrapes even like this time of the year?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
they check them year round. Yeah, I've seen them. Some of our cameras that we leave up all year round, they'll still use licking branches to communicate and things. I think, from my experience, they may not scrape up the ground as much, but they're using those licking branches year round.
gotcha. So I tell you what, man, I found a lot of fresh scrapes yesterday. I was like, there's no way they're doing scrapes, but man, they're like these community scrapes. They're just like, just they look fresh,
Yeah.
I was like, man, what is going on? Um,
Well, we're really
I
not
want
that
to,
far out of. I mean, normally by January, most of the does are bred, but there could be situations where a few of them got overlooked, and as long as they keep coming in the
sure.
heat, there's going to be bucks out there looking for them while they still have their antlers on, obviously.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And I'm starting to see some bucks lose antlers. We came across one shed on a buddy's farm the other day. Um, but yeah, I did notice, I think it was after Christmas, there might have been a second rut because there were some bucks chasing does after
Yeah.
Christmas time, right before that big freak, actually. And it makes you wonder, because we had such a warm rut, like those deer, they're just, don't take this wrong way, acting like fat middle-aged men. They're like, ah, God, she'll come to me if she wants. I'm gonna have a beer. I mean, they were not
Right.
moving, and I
Right.
kind of wonder if the temperatures screw them up that bad, if that rut just gets delayed, or if it's just going to be like clockwork, and no matter what, it just might be a slower rut. I don't know. This year was so funky. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what the biologists tell us is true. I mean, the rut's happening. You just might not be
Yeah.
seeing it. I think the weather does affect it. If it's warm, a lot of people say, "Oh, those deer are nocturnal." Well, yeah, they don't want to be chasing does when it's 80 degrees or 70 degrees. They'll do it at
Yeah.
night when it's 50.
Right. Right.
So,
Exactly. Speaking of biologists, I know we're kind of coming our time here, but I want to ask you. I try to listen to our biologists, guys from MSU Deer Labs, and really just focus on you know the best research they can provide. But man, you get on Facebook, and I hear it everywhere, like handing out too many tags, and the deer, there's not much deer as used to be, and blah 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 blah. What are you hearing in your neck of the woods? Are you hearing a lot of whiners or not so much?
oh yeah, Pennsylvania's full of that. I mean, and when I say full of it, you know what they're full of. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it just seems like a lot of people have an inability to adjust to a situation. Like
Right.
you run into so many people. They're like, "Well, I killed a buck out of here back in 2006, and I'm just not seeing deer there anymore." It's like, so what do you mean? Is that the only place you hunted? Like
Right.
you have to move around. You have to stay scouting. You have to scout more than you hunt all the time. But one way that I differentiate all that stuff, and I have a lot of faith in science, and there's a lot of really smart people, a lot smarter than me, of course. Um, but just if somebody's trying to sell you something
Yeah.
versus somebody that's not trying to sell you something, if somebody's
Right.
just sharing the information for information's sake, and they're trying to better themselves with more knowledge and try to share that knowledge, because there's a lot of people trying to sell stuff today, and
Right.
God bless them. I mean, there's some great products that have come out to help hunters and
Sure.
help habitat managers, but again, it gets back to that keeping things simple. Like
Right.
when
Right.
people are trying to sell you something, they have to sell you a problem so they can sell you the solution, and it's
That's very true.
you
That's
just
right.
have to wade through that stuff. But no, I think our game commissions or division of wildlife, whatever your state calls them, they have a really tough job because they have to
Yeah,
please everybody. And when you think about
exactly.
hunters, what are we now? 10% of the population, 20% of the population now?
Mm-hmm.
We're we're a minority group that they're trying to appease
That's
and
right.
still make the other 80, 90% happy. So I just caution people to be patient with their state game agencies. Those guys are trying. I have a lot of friends that are involved in that in different states. They're not trying to screw you out of filling your tag. They're not trying to take hunting
No,
away from you. They're doing the best they can, and they put a lot of time and effort in the. We really have a lot of great opportunities in this country still. So it's
absolutely.
it's hard to complain about it.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I generally don't trust government, but I know the people in my DNR, and most of them are hunters or fishermen, and they love the outdoors. So you have someone on the inside, and
Right.
they have the one, to me, one of the best jobs in the world to get it to research wildlife, and actually put the information towards hunters. But you have that paradigm shift for people like, whoa, wait, that doesn't agree with what I have to say, so I'm going to complain about it. But I'm like, guys, you can talk to your cervid biologist. Those guys want to talk to you. Most of them do, at least. Well, maybe not all of them. Maybe a lot of them will be away from people. That's why I'm in the woods all the time, right? Like we all are. But it's like they want to tell you what's going on. Here's an example. So I was talking to one of our regional biologists of our Sagima Wildlife Unit, and I asked him, I said, Jeff, what's a healthy deer population to you? He goes, oh, I don't know, 15 deer per square mile is kind of high. I go, that's high. And he said, well, let me give you an idea. I drove from my work to home within 10 miles, counted 250 deer in 10 miles. That's already 100 deer over his suggested rate. I'm like, if you think about it, it is. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And, it's weird. I see a lot of complaints about people complaining about people shooting too many does. And I just want to talk about this because it's been bugging me. I think people are really bad at math. So, like the CWD concern, EHD concern, if you think about it, if you have less deer, you're going to have less deer infected by CWD. I don't want them all gone, but let's say you have, like, let's say my math here, 50 deer on a farm. You have a small HD outbreak. Let's say it's just 10%. Okay. So you lose 5 deer. It's not a big deal. But when you go to 500 deer, now all of a sudden you lose 50 deer. Everyone starts panicking. Their ratio is still the same. You just have too many deer. And I'm like, so what do we want? Do we want more sick deer for the sake of having sick deer? Or would you rather have more opportunities to kill deer in your freezer, put in your freezer instead, and have a healthier deer population? Same thing with CWD. It's like, I'd rather, if CWD, unfortunately, is starting to grow more in Iowa. And luckily in my county, when I live in and my farm's at, it's okay for now, but next door, it's getting a little scary.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'd rather see more does get shot. I want them seeing used. I don't want to see like what some bigger liberal cities hire snipers, let them rot. I don't want to see that either. But it's like, maybe we do need to create more hunting opportunities so we can less that spread. I mean, like I said, I'd rather see a smaller, healthier deer population than a very large population that's sick. Because then what good is that for anybody?
Yeah.
So those
Yep.
are those concerns I think about. I don't know. It's interesting to me that, and I don't understand, Brian, like why people want to see more does, like want to see more deer. And I don't get it because, as an example, we had a very aggressive doe campaign on my farm in 2022, killed 12 does. And I was going from an 8-to-2 doe to buck ratio. I saw about, for every 8 does, I saw 2 bucks. Okay.
Mm.
This year I saw
It's like
every
4-to-1.
does. Well, I went from 6 does. Now I'm seeing 4 bucks for every 6 does. So I'm like, I'm seeing, in a range from year and a half to 4.5. And to me, that was really encouraging to see that ratio change just for in one season on a 130-acre farm, taking out a dozen does to see that. So to me, I think we need to spend more time talking to guys like Dr. Bronson Strickland and our survey biologist. And to me, if you want to see, even more bucks or having a healthier buck genetics, two things. I think we should be killing more does. And number two, we need to discipline ourselves from just shooting. Because I saw, and here's the thing. All right, put this. I don't want to ever make someone feel bad for the buck they shot. I'm like, hey, man, it's free country. You work hard all year. You want to shoot that buck? Good for you, man. I'm super
Sure.
happy for it. A lot of guys tagged out this year early in Iowa. Like, and some of these bucks, I was like, oh, it's the first week of October and you shot like, this buck. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That might be the only opportunity you have for the rest of the year. Good for you, But a lot of guys are like, I'm done. Like, you're done? No, 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 no. It's on 24/7, pals. Let's get back out there, kill some does.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, did you notice that? Did you see a lot of guys take out early in your neck of the woods, or was it, or did you come across that at all?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a mix.
Like
Al
kind of
killed.
get it over with kind of thing?
Yeah. Al from Vitalized Seed killed on
Yeah.
opening day of Ohio. But
But that
that
was a
wasn't
nice
that. Yeah.
deer,
That
yeah,
wasn't a let's get it over with type of thing. That was just good,
opportunity.
good
Right.
scouting and good intel and good execution on his part. Um,
Absolutely.
but getting back to the doe thing, yeah, I mean that's been a problem in PA for years. I know some guys that have never shot a doe. They'll even go so far as to buy doe tags and not use them so other people won't shoot them because
That is
they
so
think
weird.
there's not enough deer. And I'm with you. I was in a stand in Ohio and we shot 7 deer off of this property, or 7 does off of this property, and I saw 30 some deer in one evening sit, just a few hours. I mean, it's cool to see deer, but it's also cool to have healthy habitat and healthy herds, which I think is
Right.
actually cooler.
Oh, absolutely. Well, another thing to think about, so I'm into the native habitat regeneration stuff, and 80% of 85% of a deer's diet is woody browse, and
Right.
they're hungry because stuff that's come back, it's beautiful. Come back a week later, I'm like, where'd it go? And I'm like, that's my breeding habitat for the turkeys, man. I mean, these things have a pretty negative effect on even their neighboring wildlife, and it's crazy.
Sure.
It's like, and I could rant about it all day long. I won't. You've heard it all, but I just want to encourage guys, like, we got to think more. We got to talk to people that are in it every day. I don't care what agency they have behind them. If you have a survey biologist that's the guys like you and I that care, talk to him.
Right.
Dr. Brian
Right.
Strickland, that guy is awesome at replying to people. He's been on my podcast twice, and I've learned so much from the guy. And I'm just like, man, I just want to have you live up here for a day. I'll buy you lunch, and we can just do a whole day long podcast, your video, just talking about deer management. But
And guys need to remember they're 10 or 50 or 100 or 200 acres, whatever they're hunting. whatever they're seeing and experiencing on that 200 acres is a drop in the bucket compared to the county or the
Yeah.
state level that they're hunting on.
Yeah.
It's not the same. It could
Right.
be completely different on the neighbor's property. It's the same with the rut. Guys are like, oh, we didn't have a rut. Well, you did. It just wasn't
Yeah.
happening where you were sitting.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I was listening to, I want to say that earlier. I was listening to Meat Eater, and they're talking about kind of a lower deer harvest, but also they noticed a higher mass drop from oak trees. So, and I was trying to hunt the timber where the oaks, were dropping at, and I didn't see much movement because part of it was warm, and it just that particular day they might have gone to a different little mod of oaks somewhere, and they want to be over there. They wanted beans that day. Whatever, it is what it is.
Right.
But I tried to adapt, but a lot of guys are just kind of like, well, they're not my favorite spots, so they're just not here anymore. And it's like, well, I mean, why not set that little brush blind by the acorns, by these big bull
Sure.
folks are dropping acorns. I mean, that just to me be more exciting, change it up and add some experience in your back pocket.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, Brian, I better let you go because it sounds like you got a busy day planned ahead of you here. So I really appreciate you coming on. And where can people go find you at?
Yeah, so you mentioned my YouTube channel, not really knowing about it. The reason for that is once I was working, once I sold my magazine, I started getting hired by other companies to do some editorial work and some other promotion and marketing for other companies. So my Copperhead Unlimited company kind of took a back seat for a long time.
Mm,
So kind of what we talked about getting back to my roots and trying
mm,
to experience all the fun stuff of waterfowl hunting and things like that. That's what I'm kind of getting into on the channel now. I've got a good buddy that's real pumped up about growing that, and it's fun to have help on that. And we're just enjoying putting out content, kind of general hunting and outdoors and fishing content. So that's Copperhead ULTD. It's just the abbreviation for unlimited. Copperhead ULTD
okay.
on YouTube. I've got a Facebook channel or Facebook page and an Instagram page under the same name. Um, I'm still doing things with the Habitat podcast. That's probably how most of your listeners recognize me. Jared's doing some great things over there. We've got some new stuff coming down the pipe, and I'll be working on one of the Vitalized Seed test farms again this year. So
Cool.
check out everything Vitalized Seeds got going on, and yeah, that's about it.
I gotta ask, do you sell those hats you're wearing?
Yes, sir.
It's a very nice hat, guys. So it's a nice gray background. You got three circles of a nice buck, a duck, and I think it's a bass. So just go check it out. Where can people buy those if they wanted to?
Just go to my Facebook page and scroll down. You'll see a
Gotcha.
link to it there.
Perfect. Yeah, it's very nice. I'm gonna have to go get one myself. Or we do a trade. When my hats come out, we should do a trade or something.
Yeah, I'll bring you one with the back issues.
Oh, hey, that's great. Love it. All right, everybody. So you know where to find Brian at. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Beast of Burden podcast.